Greetings and bienvenue, midnight crew. Thank you for returning to this broadcast, and welcome to new viewers joining us for the first time. If you like a video, then feel free to subscribe.
Not a big happening, but some Aussie friend OC as Aborigine X stuff doesn't get posted a lot. I'm around 13 or 14 at the time. My mum has a support worker, carer, community helper, etc. sorta deal. Tells me one day that I'm going with her to this Aboriginal community get-together, meetup. I protest as I just want to neat and play games at home. I don't have a choice. On the drive for the first time in my life, I realize just how serene the Outback can be. Tranquility achieved. Get there and it's like this campsite with some built-up modern little motel rooms, cabins, but super remote. Basically do normal setup and campsite shit for the day and learn some Outback advice from some young guys that like to camp out. They teach me definitely not what to eat, touch and do in a remote situation like that. Aw sweet, just like my games.jpg. The smiles drop from their faces as they look me straight in the eye and tell me the most important information for being out here is to be told by the elders tonight. Okay, WTF. That was some spoopy shit, so I told my mum and she said it's probably worthwhile to have a listen and decide for myself as they are connected to this land spiritually in a way we might never know. Dinner rolls around and at first I'm like, fuck this man, the food's going to be like shit. Goddamn, I just want spaghetti bolognese or something. Turns out they have made some kangaroo stew and fresh dampier, which to this day is some of the best campfire grub I've ever had, and go back for seconds because I was a fat cunt. We eat and talk around the campfire in little groups of convos at first, and then the elder starts to gradually take point of the conversation. She tells us dreamtime stories of how everything came to be and how their people listened to what is not heard and not seen. She eventually broaches the topic of spirits and how just important they are and equal to the living in every way and must be respected. Goes on to say whether good or bad spirits are integral to the way of life, as there is much to learn from these spirits. Explains that spirits are drawn to intense emotions and feelings whatever end of the spectrum, I guess you could say. Tells us that the living in particular with intense readings can be targets for these spirits, good or bad. Sometimes though, when life is lost too soon, spirits can return, linger? She used a native word for it and the guy I guess he crunched his forehead trying to translate that for her. In particular, in the time of need they can appear as guides for the living to show the way forward. Now at this point, I'm completely enthralled. Call it how you want, but she was very passionate about the land and her stories, and they were interesting too. Woke the fuck up with what she said next. I notice she's now looking at me, but honestly it felt like she was looking at my mind and my soul. To this day no one has ever struck that same feeling into me. She eyes me for a few more seconds, says, not before looking above my left shoulder and right shoulder, but above?
Not everything we have lost is gone, but closer to us at a level very few can perceive. Open your heart, and the goodness that is there will be for all to see.
What.jpg. It's important at this point to mention I have 2 dead brothers, but that comes later. Everyone was just listening to her and trying not to make eye contact with me at the time. She bows her head as if it took effort.
We had a good night tonight, with some tucker, and I hope everyone had a good time. There is only one thing you have to do tonight.
Her smile faded and she looked at everyone before staring at me again with that soul-piercing gaze.
Do not go outside tonight. Your bed resting place is safe. And I've made sure you won't come to harm. But that is if you act according to our laws and respect our spirits.
At this point I'm getting creeped the fuck out and have seen enough horror movies to know how this ends. She stands up with the vigor of a fucking 23-year-old and, elder remember. Smiles as if she didn't spend the last 15 minutes warning us spirits would tear us a new asshole if we went outside tonight. My mum and I go off to our little cabin and decide to get some sleep. I got a chance to ask her what she thought. She frowned and said,
No matter what I believed, I should stay inside as a sign of respect, no matter what I thought, as they would be deeply offended.
But did you believe them?
Just because we don't understand how some things work in the world, honey, doesn't mean they aren't there or real.
So that's a yes?
Go to bed, Anon. I think we've both heard enough stories tonight.
There were 2 singles and unfortunately they were uncomfortable as shit, but I slept on the one closest to the door along with some other lightly furnished stuff, including 2 chairs both facing their backs to the windows. 3 a.m. rolls around and on the spot something is wrong here. No, something is very wrong here. Every single one of my hairs on my arms, legs standing as straight as a fucking arrow. I have this clench feeling, twist in my gut and chest. Come on, a heart attack at 14? Surely fucking not. As time goes on it gets worse and the entrance side of the cabin is getting really, and I mean really, cold. For perspective, it was a hot and muggy night in Australia, so even a 5-degree temp change would have been noticeable. This felt like it was a giant freezer on the other side even from the bed. My dumb ass tosses up whether or not it's a good idea to check what the fuck it is. I felt something different though from the 2 chairs, slowly but surely 2 warm auras? Feelings? I start to hear this low moaning and wind gushes of just this awful, and I mean awful, wailing. I try to block my ears but my chest could feel this shit, so I man up and get out of bed. I put my ear to the door and the best way I could describe what I heard was a soul being sundered in 2 and in the same nanosecond being stitched back together. What I heard was the pain of that if that happened to a fucking person. And that's just one. What I heard in total around the cabin was a miasma of them. I step back and prepare myself for a big nuts moment and go for the handle. The 2 auras I mentioned are now on each side of me, and with senses I can't name or even describe, I saw them, or better yet perceived them. They were both golden in this warm yellow light that I maybe saw for a second. One held my arm going for the door handle and the other one held my shoulder. Nothing needed to be said, but deep down inside I was told not to open that door. It was almost like I needed confirmation that I wouldn't be attacked by something on the other side of that door. I suddenly feel this soothing feeling like as long as I listen everything will be fine. I nope the fuck away from the door and try to get to sleep. They are still there, but along with the auras that were fronting the storm? I don't know. 3:33 rolls by and poof, the sounds go away from the door along with that bone-chilling cold man. For only a few seconds the auras lingered, but in a way that made me feel safe before they had to leave. Sleep like a baby moments after. Wake up next morning and go to the campfire and there's the elder. It's only us. I don't look at her at first and just sit down, but eventually look and she's smiling ear to ear, almost proud even.
I'm glad you listened to them, they are always close.
I'm tearing up at this point because I can't even get the words out. Was it them?
They love you very much.
Looks to her left and right and smiles back at me. I thanked her and went back to the cabin in tears. I told my mum years later and she just smiled, not a word. TLDR. My dead brothers saved me as spirit forms from getting destroyed by ghosts.
Blackfella here, long-time lurker. Why these threads always degenerate into talking about how dumb and barbaric my people are is beyond me, but if you're interested, I have a story. My pop used to take me out on the country and take me to places that no one knew about. Only some of our mob go to these places, lakes, valleys and bushland mostly. One spot, the spot where the trees speak, he would say. Sit long enough and they might speak to you. He'd leave me here for an hour or so while he'd go off on his own business, and I was usually left here to take in the surroundings. It's a cultural thing, but boring as fuck as you can imagine. I was 14 at the time. One day, I'm alone here and I notice there is no wind. Dead silent. The trees around me though are shaking and swaying. Bad feeling setting in. I want to leave but can't go nowhere without Pop because I don't know my way around too well here. Trees stop moving, a big fuck off crow swoops down and lands right in front of me. The cunt has no eyes. It's motionless and just standing the fuck there. What's worse is its beak is opening and shutting but no noise is coming out. 60 seconds I'm frozen in fear, confusion, and Pop strolls back and speaks in language to it, and it flies away. I didn't say a thing, and all Pop asked was, "Did you listen?" I say I couldn't hear shit, and he responds with, "I didn't ask if you could hear it, I asked if you listened." To this day I don't know what that meant. The answers usually come in time, when you're ready, the old fella say. Pop passed away about a year after this. It goes kind of like this. If I want to learn more about my experience, I'd have to seek out the right people, elders, not many left. If I do, it's likely I'd be encouraged to go through law business. It's more like a process, or a rite of passage for me to attain that sacred information. It's a fucking commitment, let me tell you. Haven't gone that route because I don't know if I believe in the stories I've heard, and also because I'm simply not confident enough to become that kind of person. There is knowledge that is hidden from us here, and the elders do have an understanding of these things, that I'm sure. If you've ever heard of Featherfoot, it's quite interesting. People get confused and think this is a paranormal entity or being, which it is not. Well, not really. Going by many names, Featherfoot is just the name our mob adopted in English to explain the phenomena, because he leaves no tracks. He's a lawman, an elder who is conducting business, so to speak. They operate on the astral plane, perhaps you'd say. Mob gets funny ways even mentioning him. He doesn't leave footprints, but he will leave you things like feathers, stones, bones. You don't want bones. This is his way of telling you something you need to know. Fuck me, uncle could just call me though, but this is the old way people would communicate over long distances, and much more that I won't ever learn about unless I go that way. One time my nan yelled out to us kids, "Come inside right now," midday, nothing going on. We get inside and looked around outside the window and nothing was wrong. Nan wouldn't say much, she was just stressing. After an hour or two she let us back out to play, and when I asked about it she just said my uncle was here and needed to see something. My uncle is in another state.
I, along with a workmate, helped police in what I believe was a missing 411 case. Two of the police detectives were very confused and one was definitely very uncomfortable towards the end of the investigation. Person is still missing as far as I know. I'll do a bit of a rundown on it if you guys are interested. I might leave two things out of it. The area within the state and the name of the person. Would probably be able to dox me and my former company. I was a heavy diesel mechanic that worked on earth-moving equipment. The company I worked for did a lot of contracts for roads and general earth-moving. Jobs tended to be very remote. On this occasion the job was extremely remote. I helped escort a prime mover with a low loader carrying a cat dozer on it. We had to drop off various types of equipment in preparation for a large culvert highway detour. This was the first convoy of equipment. The workshop had 3 German Shepherd guard dogs that were quite nasty. The boss would usually make us take them and chain them to equipment to prevent theft. When working remotely, we unloaded and I tried the dogs up under the dozer with water and we left. We would be back in the morning. We set off about 4 the next morning with equipment and headed off. It was a 7-hour drive. I arrived to find 2 of the dogs missing. I was panicked because I didn't want them roaming around off the chain. However, one of the other dogs that I tried to the rear of the dozer was still there curled up in a ball. Not barking and going ape shit like it normally did. It was cowering. On closer inspection I found an ear and part of the scalp of one of the dogs. It had slipped a steel chain link collar that was extremely tight. Because you don't ever want them to get off the chain. The other chain I could see was broken. The actual link was broken. So the other dog had broken the chain. All around where the chain would have been tight where did marks like the dogs were trying to get away from something. I got on the dozer to move it. It wouldn't start. Long story short, after about 4 days of trying to repair it to get it started and running, we replaced every computer and every controller. They were all cooked. I thought maybe it was hit by lightning, but one of the dogs was still tied to the dozer, and I've worked on machines hit by lightning before and it didn't have the signs of a lightning strike. During the first day of repairs, we noticed a heavy police presence and thought something must be up because there is nothing around out here. We found out pretty quickly that police are investigating a missing person that was reported the same night we dropped off the dozer. Some old boy and his missus were camping in a caravan a few kilometers further up the road by a large lake. She said he got up in the early hours and went outside. She went back to sleep and woke up and he was gone. When I heard that, I looked at the truck driver who was with me and said, "Holy mother of fuck, those dogs must have got the poor old cunt." Panic set in. I rang my boss and he said, "Keep your mouth shut and sit tight." Search went on for a while, then a police car came to where we were working. I straight up told him about the dogs. Policemen said they found 2 dead German Shepherd dogs by the lake. I said, "Did the old guy shoot them?" And Copper said, "Nope." I said, "How did they die?" He said, "Dono." Turns out the dogs were found about 40 kilometers away, died of exhaustion, by the lake not near the camp. We helped with investigations because a Kenworth truck with a water cart on it had a dash camera. And it filmed the entry into the camp. Turns out no one else went in besides the caravan. In the morning we found the dogs and a large storm was coming from the west. It hampered the search and was raining the entire time I was trying to fix the dozer. Fast forward a month or so, I started noticing that the one German Shepherd left was acting strange. He wouldn't bark and go nuts the second someone walked along the side of the shed like normal. Note this was previously an extremely vicious dog. Had previously bit many employees. It was a crazy dog. The dog during the day would curl up in a ball and lay near where people would be working. Previously I hated every single person, but now never wanted to be left alone. At night it would sleep under a giant floodlight, the only source of light in the yard, in rain, hail, or freezing cold. It didn't matter. That dog would not go into the darkness away from the light. Soon it became clear the dog was not a good guard dog and was replaced with another 3 German Shepherds. I took the dog and he lived for another 3 years before he died. That dog seen something. The other 2 dogs fucking seen something, and I bet that poor old boy that went missing fucking seen something. During the investigation, the police went from investigating missing persons to suspecting foul play. Before it was told by the detective sometime later, passed of to the feds before turning back into missing persons. He, detective, said that it was extremely strange. They had sniffer dogs and found nothing. They had no tracks. They found the old boy's shirt, shorts and shoes by the lake. When I say lake, I'm talking about a giant salt lake. It would be lucky to be 2 foot deep. At the deepest point you'd see a body in the water. That detective was baffled. I always thought it was strange, then started learning about missing 411, and I think it fits it to the point.
Very interesting. Thanks for sharing, friend. However, I'm not clear on what happened with the fried equipment. My understanding is that missing 411 is basically code for Sasquatch. But I don't know of Squatch events being related to mechanical failure. What are your thoughts?
No worries, mate. Look, I have no ideas on what happened. I mean, yeah, I shit in AQ every now and then, but not every computer. I'm positive it wasn't a lightning strike, but it could have been, as I have no other explanations. However, the dash camera on the Kenworth water cart was pointing straight at the dozer, but police took it before I even thought to look at it. Within a day or so of the camera being taken, the state detective was replaced by feds. I asked what was on the camera and he said he wished he watched it. He said sent it away for forensic examination, and next thing he knew he was off the case. Weird shit. This was in Australia. Sorry, forgot to add that, my bad, guys.
I hope that you enjoyed tonight's broadcast. If you enjoyed tonight's story, then please subscribe to the channel, as more green texts will appear daily. A new broadcast will appear when the clock strikes midnight Central Time.
Remember that all videos have been archived on the Odyssey page.